The IRS doesn't send emails, they don't call, they don't text, they don't slide into your inbox. When the IRS wants you, they send a letter, and the moment you see that return address, your entire body knows. Karen Holloway hadn't thought about the year 2019 in a long time. She had a reason for that. She was 44 now, a bookkeeper in Raleigh, North Carolina, good at her job, professionally, methodically, almost obsessively good at her job. The irony of that wouldn't hit her until she was sitting at her kitchen table at 11 p.m. on a Wednesday, holding a CP 2000 notice, IRS letterhead, 12 pages, with hands that would not stop shaking. The number at the bottom of page 3, $177,820, plus penalties, plus interest. She read it 3 times. She told herself it was a mistake. She told herself that, just like every person who has ever opened one of those letters. Most of them were wrong. Let's go back to 2019. Karen was working for a small property management company in Cary, a suburb just west of Raleigh. The owner, Dennis Hargrove, was the kind of man who ran a profitable business entirely on charm and selective amnesia. He paid Karen well. He also paid her off the books. Not all of it, enough. $60,000 in cash over 14 months, bonuses, he called them, side payments, off-cycle. Karen knew it wasn't right. But Karen also had 2 kids, a car payment, and a mortgage that was 3 months from foreclosure. She told herself it was temporary. She told herself she'd sort it out next tax season. She told herself the thing people always tell themselves when they know exactly what they're doing and cannot afford emotionally or financially to stop. Next tax season came. She filed her return, W-2 income only. The cash she left off. She told herself the amounts were too small to flag. She was wrong about the amounts. She was wrong about the flag. What Karen didn't know, what Dennis Hargrove absolutely knew, was that in early 2021, the IRS opened a civil audit on his company. They found irregular expense deductions, contractor payments with no 199s issued, a pattern of off-book compensation going back 5 years. The auditors worked backward through every record they found Karen's name, the payments, the dates, the amounts. They cross-referenced her tax returns for 2018, 2019, and 2020. The discrepancy in 2019 alone, $61,400 in unreported income. The CP 2000 notice sat in the IRS system for 8 months before it was mailed. That's how these things work. The agency moves slowly, deliberately. It does not forget, it does not lose paperwork, it does not get distracted, it simply waits until the math is complete. Karen opened the letter on a Thursday. By Friday morning, she had called 3 tax attorneys. The first told her the number was likely accurate. The second told her the penalties alone were going to be substantial. The third attorney, a woman named Patricia Osei, operating out of a small office on Hillsborough Street, listened to the entire story without interrupting. Then she said, "Tell me everything, from the beginning, leave nothing out." Karen talked for 40 minutes. Patricia took 6 pages of notes. The good news is you're not being criminally investigated. Yet. A CP 2000 is a proposed change. It's not a bill, not a judgment. You have time to respond. The bad news, Patricia continued, is that ignoring it or responding without documentation will convert this into an assessment. And once the IRS assesses a tax debt, Miss Holloway, she paused, choosing her words carefully. They become very creative about collecting it. Karen thought about her house, her bank account, her paycheck, the word garnishment. She thought about her daughter's college fund, 4 years of $50 transfers, never missing one. She thought about all of it sitting exposed on a table she didn't know she'd been sitting at for 5 years. Patricia outlined the strategy. First, gather every record from 2019, bank statements, cash withdrawal evidence, anything Hargrove had signed. Second, file an amended return, proactively acknowledge the unreported income. Third, apply for an installment agreement or an offer in compromise depending on current financial position. The IRS does not want to destroy people, Patricia said, genuinely. They want compliance and they want payment. Those are 2 different things. Show them you're willing to comply, in writing, with documentation before they have to compel you, and the conversation changes completely. Karen spent 3 weeks gathering documents. She drove to Cary twice to retrieve records she hadn't looked at since she left Hargrove's company. She found deposit slips, text messages referencing the envelope this Friday, a spreadsheet she'd kept, meticulous, habitual, the bookkeeper and her unable to stop tracking, of every payment received, That spreadsheet would save her, not because it proved innocence, she wasn't innocent, because it proved cooperation, transparency, voluntary disclosure. In tax law, those things carry extraordinary weight. Patricia submitted the response to the IRS on day 58 of the 60-day window. With it, the amended 2019 return, the full documentation, a financial disclosure statement, and a formal request for penalty abatement under the First-Time Abatement Program, a provision most Americans have never heard of, which forgives penalties for taxpayers with a clean prior compliance history. Karen had filed on time every single year since she was 22 years old. That history, those 22 years of quiet, unremarkable compliance, now stood in her defense. The IRS reviewed the response over 11 weeks. 11 weeks of Karen checking the mail every morning like it was a second job. The response came on a Tuesday. Single-page IRS letterhead. Proposed tax due. $61,400 in unreported income. Confirmed. Penalties waived under first-time abatement. Interest reduced to $9,340, a statutory minimum on the adjusted amount. Installment agreement. Approved $410 per month for 24 months. Total out-of-pocket spread over 2 years. Manageable. Not painless, but manageable. Karen sat at the same kitchen table where she'd opened the first letter. Same chair, same late hour, different feeling entirely. Not relief, exactly, something more complicated than relief. She thought about 2019, the choices, the rationalizations, the things she'd known and done anyway. She thought about the 5 years the IRS had simply held that information. Patient, organized, waiting for the moment the math closed. There's a version of this story where Karen ignored the letter. A lot of people do. 30% of CP 2000 recipients never respond within the window. When that happens, the proposed change becomes an automatic assessment. Then come the collection notices. Then the federal tax lien, public record, visible to any lender, any employer who checks. Then comes the levy, your bank account frozen. Your wages garnished up to 70% of disposable income by federal law. Your tax refunds intercepted for years. Your passport flagged and potentially revoked if the debt exceeds $62,000. The IRS has tools that no private creditor has. No lawsuit required, no judgment required, no warning beyond the notices they already sent. They simply act, because the law says they can. Karen made her first installment payment on a Friday, $420, scheduled automatically from her checking account. She watched the confirmation number appear on the IRS online portal, a website she had never visited before that night 5 years ago. She bookmarked it. That same Friday, she called her younger sister, the one who had mentioned last Thanksgiving that her boyfriend was paying people cash under the table, and it's basically free money. Karen didn't lecture. She didn't tell her own story. She just said, make sure you're reporting everything. All of it. Trust me on this one. Her sister laughed. The IRS doesn't care about small amounts. Karen didn't argue. She just said, they don't forget either. She hung up, went back to her kitchen table, opened her bookkeeping software, client files, clean and organized, not a dollar unaccounted for, because Karen Holloway knew something now that she hadn't known at 38. The most expensive thing in America isn't a tax bill. It's the 5 years you spend thinking you got away with it, while the agency that never sleeps, never forgets, and never loses paperwork quietly does the math and waits. The IRS doesn't send emails. They send letters. And when that envelope arrives, with that return address, your body already knows what your mind spent years pretending not to. This is a work of fiction for entertainment purposes only, not legal or tax advice. Consult a qualified professional.